But as far as I'm concerned, the first thing you can do for me is to chuck all your medals and all your caps and all your pots and all your pans into the biggest flipping dustbin you can find. Because you've never won any of them fairly. You've done it all by bloomin' cheating.
Hey guys, welcome to SheKnowsArsenal. My name is Jessica. I'm your host. You can follow me on Twitter at JessieNeoTweets and at SheKnowsArsenal. Welcome to another episode. We're going to be going over the most recent Arsenal news and just chit-chatting today because there's tons of things to talk about. Obviously, Manchester City have been caught cheating. What cheaters? Liars. Cheaters. An abomination. Are you for real? The relegation celebration starts today. So we'll talk about everything that's kind of unfolded in regards to Manchester City, obviously. Then we also have to talk about Manchester City versus Tottenham and kind of get your guys' feelings on, how shameless do we need to be? I mean, I don't know about you, but I definitely was sitting there like, Kane put that ball in the back of the net because we need City to drop these points. So I just want to know from your guys' perspective, how shameless were you when that goal went in? And then we'll talk about Arsenal failing to capitalize on maybe City's mishaps. It's difficult to say that we didn't capitalize because we played first, but I do think you have some hindsight, maybe regret, feeling like, oh, well, City dropped points to Spurs. We could have been 8 points clear. But getting Sean Dyched, doesn't hurt as bad now, knowing that we're still 5 points clear. But it does put us in a situation going into a difficult fixture at the weekend where maybe some things could be changed. Maybe Arteta needs to do some things differently. So we'll talk about what maybe we could change or what needs to happen against Brentford so that we make sure that we get the points. And, if anything does happen with City, I think City play Aston Villa, we're in a position to capitalize on it. So make sure you guys like the video and subscribe to the channel. Let's see what you guys are saying. Saksham says Tottenham did something good. Wow, I'm surprised as well. Spurs says Tony says Spurs get battered even when they win. Systems Matter say, do you fear Manchester United sneaking up on us? Because I do. We can talk about that in a second as well. Drew Magus says, if not cheating, you're not trying. I don't know. MH says, man, cheaty. That's a good one. You guys like the clip? I just saw it on Twitter and I was like, yeah, I'm going to steal that because that's perfect. I mean, here's the thing. I remember sitting in London. I was visiting London years ago, right before COVID hit, and seeing on my phone that, they were being charged with similar things years ago by UEFA. And we know how that kind of unfolded. They basically bust case. They basically got out. There was like a statute of limitation and like a certain amount of time where they couldn't be charged for certain things. And, I know they heavily leaned upon the fact that the information was hacked by somebody to illegitimize the evidence that was being used against them. So Manchester City are kind of like that team where I think it's pretty obvious that they've done something wrong. Like they're not just going to come after you multiple times if you haven't done anything, but it's just a matter of, are they smart enough to get out of it? And I feel like they were able to get away from UEFA, but the Premier League seem a little bit, kind of hell-bent on getting them. It's been 4 years in the making of them gathering enough evidence to charge them with, and it's 100, charges dating all the way back to 2009. So I don't know how you get away from that. I mean, some of the stuff that I don't know if I'm saying feel like it's just cooking the books, but I know it has something to do with like their sponsors and maybe those not being legitimate, and that's how they're shifting money around. And so it dates back really, really far. And I do think the Premier League feel like they have enough of a case to take them down. But I guess what most Arsenal fans want to know or want to talk about is, did Cancelo know? No, I'm just joking. I just saw this and I thought it was funny. Did Cancelo know? Did Arteta, did he have something to do with it? After we lost to Everton, did he go to the Premier League and sneak some evidence down and say, hey, take Pep down? I don't know. No, I'm just joking. But what Arsenal fans, I think, really want to know is if this is going to affect this season and benefit us in any way. And should we want that? You guys know me. If you guys have been here before, I'm shameless. I don't care. I want any sort of benefit, any sort of, any bit of extra that's going to help us get it over the line. I don't care what it is. I don't give a damn if there's an asterisk on our Premier League title. I don't care because I want to be drunk at the parade anyway. Why would I care? So it's kind of like, I do see like there's this element from certain Arsenal fans that are like, I don't want them to get points deducted or anything like that because then it'll not look like a legitimate Premier League title for us. First of all, let's just focus on winning it. We have a long way to go. And as we saw, against Everton, this team, is going to go through difficult periods. And so it's not that straightforward. But if you told me right now that 15 points, could be deducted from Manchester City, and I had the ability to press the button, I would press the button. Like, hello. I think they're our biggest competition right now. I know some people are talking about Manchester United. I do think, Manchester United looks strong, they're in a good period, but I wouldn't start counting them as like our biggest competition for the title when Manchester City are clearly that. I know that they're not playing as good as they possibly can, but even not playing that well, they're only 5 points behind us. You know what I mean? So yeah, I mean, I would press the button if I had the choice. If it was me sitting there, I'd go, bam, you're gone, 15 points deducted, relegation, all of that. Because it's one less team in Arsenal's way. And it's a team that I feel like has inflicted a lot of pain upon us over the last 5-6 years. I mean, Manchester City have been a team that have just wiped the floor with us. They've absolutely annihilated us in so many different fixtures. They've taken our players as well, which I do blame the club for, but ultimately I'm still kind of like, if you weren't there, they may not have left. So I'm okay with them feeling a little bit of the heat because I do feel like there's an element of Manchester City and how they've gotten here has not been as straight, it hasn't been as clean as maybe people try to make it out to seem. It feels like there's an element of they didn't actually have the money, especially in the beginning, to be getting the type of manager that they did and getting the type of players that they were getting. So they did some creative accounting to get those things done so that they could get to the place that they are now. Let's see what you guys are saying. Big Jeezy says, where do these plastics go if the allegations are proven to be factual? Newcastle. Hello. Michael said, hey, Jess, I like how your makeup list these days. Oh, thank you. This is not by design or anything like that. I'm a lazy bastard and I just didn't want to do my makeup. Hello. But thank you. Let's see. Drew says they trained our coach. Well, no, they didn't train our coach. Arteta worked under Pep, but you have to remember Arteta also spent time under different managers. He comes from La Masia, so I would say more Pep trained him than Manchester City. But I kind of get what you're trying to say with that, but I'm going to give Arteta the credit for being who he is and not give it to Manchester City. Troy says, you don't have to tell me twice I'm pushing the button. Hello. I don't care, you guys. We need, it's been 18 years. I'll take it however I get it. Battle says, I hope the shakes the foundation of City and it weighs heavy on the player's mind. This is something that I do feel like maybe Manchester City fans, if you can find them, no, I'm just joking, but seriously, are not really taking into consideration is that even if you don't get points deducted this season, or you don't feel any sort of any of the consequences of what this could potentially be in the short term, that cloud hanging over the players and the manager's head can get in, it can get into the dressing room and hurt what happens on the pitch. We know you have to be really focused. You have to be present of mind on the task at hand when it comes to title races. And Manchester City they're not in a situation where it's just the Premier League that's under threat for them. It's the Champions League, and it's the one thing that Pep has not won at Manchester City, and he's got to win it. So they're in a really difficult position, I do think, because there was already an element of there's something not right here with Manchester City. And it's hard to talk about because people will be like, but it's not like they're down in 10th or whatever, like Liverpool. You don't have to be just complete capitulation to see that there's just a little something off with Manchester City. Manchester City, a year ago, 2 years ago, takes advantage of Arsenal dropping those 3 points against Everton and smashes Spurs into the ground. And so, or, you know what I mean? They don't draw to Leeds at home. They don't draw to Everton at home. Like, there were so many little results along the way that have made me kind of feel like, oh, they're not quite up to the same level that maybe they were a couple seasons ago. On top of that, when you just watch them, you can see it. Even though they still have tons of possession and they move the ball around, they don't have that same level of fluidity up front. And Holland, I do think, has created some sort of like a little bit of a wrinkle in the way that they play. And so they're having a hard time figuring out how to use him because they don't even feed him. They don't even feed him. So having something else, a cloud over their head, when there's already a team that's playing really well, that's 5 points clear of them, and also Manchester United could go level with them if they beat Leeds on Wednesday. That's a lot of pressure on a underperforming Manchester by their standards, and underperforming Manchester City side that also has to focus on Champions League in a week. So yeah, it's a lot, and I'm hoping that it's weighing heavily on them. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Boy says City lost their cohesion in the offseason. They'll get it back given enough time, but they did lose it. Sterling, Jesus, and Zinchenko, that's a lot to lose. I agree with that. It kind of feels like almost like a transitional season for them where they have a group of older players that I do think are ready to move on. We've heard a lot of rumors around Gundogan and Bernardo Silva maybe wanting to move on. Cancelo has already moved on. I don't know if Kyle Walker is feeling it. Like, there's just a lot of like, okay, these players are kind of coming to the end of their City story, if that's the way that you want to say it. And then you have like these newer players that are in that are a little bit different than the players that they've had in the past. And so they've destabilized a little bit of their team. Like you said, no Sterling, no Jesus, no Zinchenko, and they have this Holland situation that the players are not used to having. They're just not used to being in a situation where they have to feed a striker. And so it's a little bit, it's not like, I feel like it's the end of them as a team or anything like that, but it does feel a little bit like a transitional period, but it's also pressurized because they need to win the Premier League and the Champions League. Like, being in transition is difficult when you have to win every year. It's hard, we've seen that even like the older Arsenal teams, like from back in the day, that, every time they started to get good, there was like another transition because so many players left or players got injured, but there was still the pressure to win, and that's what makes it more difficult. Ben says, Man City cheating for years, taking our players just both as crazy. Across says, big ups. Glad we do things the right way, and now winning over a transition time than being now winning over a transition time than being like City or Chelsea. Hope that these things don't ruin the Prem more so. I think this is a really big decision from the Premier League. Like, they could really set a precedent here that they're not going to allow teams that are like City just kind of operate within, or find loopholes and take advantage of them to a point where they almost monopolize the league and make it difficult to compete. And so I do think that the Premier League are, trying to do something, whether or not they'll actually go through with, the consequences parts of it. That's where I'm kind of like, I'm not sure, just because we've seen City get away with it before, you know. One of the most interesting parts of this whole conversation from my perspective is I know that like a lot of Manchester United fans are talking about how they deserve titles. And I don't think there was ever really a season where they were actually blow for blow punching with Manchester City, maybe one. Liverpool, on the other hand, have had a damn near perfect team that was 99 points, you know, record point total type team that only won one Premier League title in like, you know, since Klopp has been there. And they had a 4 or 5 year period where they were so good. But the difference between them being almost inhuman, almost bigger than anything else, and the best team that we ever saw is a team that had maybe an unfair advantage. And so from my perspective, like, I wonder how Klopp feels. I wonder how Liverpool feels that they kind of did things the right way. They built a team that all came up together. They sold players for big money. You know, they used some like maybe one academy player or so. They didn't have all this depth and quality that Manchester City had, but they were so close to being something so special, but they didn't get to have that because Manchester City were there. And so, yeah, it's interesting just because like I think Liverpool have probably the biggest claim in my opinion for feeling like they deserve those titles given to them. You know what I mean? So, I don't know. I don't know what it feels like to be a Liverpool fan right now because they're in the dungeon, the dirt, the doldrums. Like they're down, 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 down. And they're like special generation, that really amazing team that they had that was firing on all cylinders for like 5 years should have maybe had like 3 titles. Like that's insane. Let's see. Jorginho is being skipped. Okay, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the Everton game in a second. Hugo says, "Would you take a league title with City points reduction?" Seeing some Arsenal fans. Yeah, I already kind of talked about that. I would press the button if it was my decision and I could get the 15 points deducted from Manchester City and send them spiraling down to, you know, grassroots. I would, because I care about Arsenal. And I was to win. Ali A says, Jess, not just Klopp team, the Suarez, Sterling, Gerrard team. Yeah, that's true. You know, that's true. I mean, a lot of this stuff goes way, way back. And so, yeah, from my perspective, if I was a Liverpool fan, even though I'd be disappointed in what's happening with the club at the moment, I would feel disappointed with seeing what I'm seeing and knowing that a lot of the work that was done from a Liverpool perspective that was done within the lines of what's okay to do is almost gone to waste because there was a team that was playing outside the lines. And from my perspective, that's something that would maybe even keep me up at night, you know, because I just feel like, I mean, that Liverpool team was perfect. Like they were as perfect could get, but you had another team that was just a little bit better. Tony says, no one remembers how you win the title. They only remember that you got one. Exactly. Let's see. Anton Dunn says, why though? Who said they wouldn't have been good without those signings? I mean, that note went out. I feel like that's why they won't be stripped is because you can't actually prove that they wouldn't still win it. But the fact that you see all the charges just puts it in your mind that something foul was going on. And so I can understand why Liverpool fans would think that they probably deserve those or would have had a better chance had City not cheated maybe. So I'm not saying 100%, but just be real. Like if this were us, if this were Arsenal, we would feel that way, even though you can't prove 110% that we would have won it had they not done what they did. But I would say that if City felt like they could win without having to cheat, they wouldn't have done it. You know what I mean? So I think that's an answer in itself. Matt G says your financials in trouble. Cancelo's in the room. I mean, he got out. He's probably like, whew. And that's another part of it as well. Like, I just wonder in terms of like incoming players, in the summer, they need to rebuild a little bit. They're going to lose some of their the Gundogan and the Bernardo Silvas, like those players I think are going to leave in the summer. What do you like? Would players take a risk going there? Maybe if things are unresolved, like the last thing you want to do is join a sinking ship potentially. So I wonder what that's going to do for them in the medium to long term. But not going to lie, the best thing about this is just how funny it is from my perspective, like online. Whatever the outcome is, it's just hilarious seeing all the memes and all that. It's just hilarious. In Manchester City, they did come back with like a response. They said, Manchester City is surprised by the issuing of these allegation breaches of the Premier League rules, particularly given the extensive engagement and vast amount of detailed materials that the EPL have been provided with. Now, the Premier League are saying that Manchester City has not cooperated in all of this. Manchester City are saying they have. The club welcomes this review of the matter by an independent commission to impartially consider comprehensive body of irrefutable evidence that exists in support of this position. As such, we look forward to the matter being put to rest once and for all. And I read that and I thought, ooh, that's a strong statement. But at the same point, like they can't put it out anything but a strong statement because from their vantage point, they have to maintain that their innocence, and anything other than a strong response would make it seem like there was something there. So I think, I read this and I just see, okay, they're going to go with their lawyers and try to push it and all this kind of stuff. The other part that's interesting with this is, and a lot of City fans were kind of complaining about this as well, is that they have their committee that they're going to go to. It's the independent commission for the Manchester City case. And one of the chairs that they appointed is Murray Rosen. And Murray Rosen is an Arsenal season ticket holder. So that had me dying too. There's so many different like storylines and funny things about it. Whatever comes about this, like, we don't know. It could take weeks, months, years to know what's actually going to happen with Manchester City. But I'll tell you, this has been a hilarious day online. If you're not online, these are the days that you should be. Tony says, to be fair, if the people who led the Premier League come out looking like clowns, I wouldn't shed a single tear. Fair enough. Let's see. Ollie says, Jess, Pep took training today and he didn't look happy. I mean, the thing is like, if he didn't look happy, it's hard to judge. Like, there's sometimes where I see Arsenal fans look at training pictures and they're like, oh, so-and-so doesn't look happy. They must not want to be there. I don't know if you can really read that much into pictures or anything like that. The one thing that Pep did say, though, is that if he's been lied to, he'll walk. And so in a lot of this, I'm sure that, the people running Manchester City have told Pep that no wrongdoing has been done, because the reality is, like, if it comes out that they've been cheating all this time, Pep's legacy does come into question. It may not be stripped, but it will come into question, and it'll kind of tarnish a lot of the things that he's done, all the hard work that he's put in at Man City. So I can see him being disappointed from that standpoint, as if he feels like he's been lied to. But looking at pictures or anything like that, it's hard to really gauge whether or not somebody is actually unhappy about what we're talking about based on a picture. Victor says Manchester City cheating will go back to where they belong. I always know that those bastards are a cheat. They have cheated Liverpool in 3 league titles in years, last 10 years. Out of everybody, Liverpool should probably feel the most, like, almost like feeling like they were fighting a fight that was hard, like almost impossible to win. And again, like we already said, like, there's no 100% guarantee that had City not had those players that they wouldn't win. But I would say you wouldn't have cheated, if you felt like you could win without them. And so, there's that. They look guilty. because this isn't going away. Keenan says the investment did Manchester City owners that made have helped to take the Premier League to a whole nother level. Seems a bit biting the hand that feeds you. I don't know. I don't know if like the investment Manchester City owners have made. So like I do feel like it's in the Premier League's best interest to have the best players playing in this league and have the most like everybody wants to see the biggest teams succeed in the Premier League, like from a Premier League perspective, because that's more money, that's more eyeballs. Like that's why they want Holland in the Premier League. That's why they want the best and the brightest, right? But it needs to be done within a way that's not totally against the rules, you know? And I do feel like they have a responsibility to the rest of the league to make sure that they adhere to a certain level of like we want it to be competitive, but we need to have like a certain level of like this is the acceptable level of like you can't be cooking the books and making up sponsors and you know what I mean? Like that too is a level of like I don't think they should be happy about that. Especially with so much different ownership coming into the Premier League, they have to set a precedent that you can't just do anything to win. You know, we want you to be competitive and we want to bring in the best. But the thing is like look from a Holland perspective. Like if first of all, okay, how do I say this? Holland is a player that went to Manchester City. But had he had not went to Manchester City, he might have went to Manchester United. And I would say that they would make just as much money getting people to watch Holland play if he had went to Manchester United over Manchester City. So even though Manchester City have done a lot to like bring money in and have the certain type of spectacle that people want to watch, I still don't feel like that's the level to which you're saying is something that should be acceptable because there's other teams that are playing within the lines that bring in a lot of money as well. And I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I think those are the clubs that have probably said you need to look into this. Liverpool, Manchester United, and Arsenal, all American ownership, all playing within a certain sphere. You know, obviously we spend more than the lower half, but we're not like our clubs are not manipulating sponsorships and trying to figure out ways to create streams of income that don't actually exist and things like that. So I don't know if that makes sense, but like Manchester City's contribution to the Premier League might be big, but if you actually created a more even playing field for the likes of Arsenal, Liverpool, and Manchester United to compete with City, I actually think you get more because more people actually care about those three clubs than they give a shit about Manchester City. Nobody actually cares about Manchester City. I think that's my point. So yeah. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with all of this. Like from my perspective, I'm not sitting here like, oh my gosh, let's get the points deduction so that Arsenal can win the league. It's nothing is going to happen. Sorry, I know I went black again. It's just a matter of whether or not the Premier League go through with it. There's two. Move on to Arsenal versus Everton before we talk about Manchester City versus Spurs. So make sure you guys like this video, subscribe to the channel while I take a little drinky drink. Thirsty, y'all. All right. So, we got Dyched. Let's talk about it. So, we have to do things in chronological order here because I feel like if we talk about Manchester City losing to Spurs, it kind of dilutes the conversation about Everton. So, with the Everton game, I have to be honest, like I was really like disappointed just because I thought we were over this. Like I thought we had gotten beyond the point where we would play a game and just look like we can't pass to each other. We're just kind of like getting overrun in midfield, physically unable to like take care of our own. Our away record is really good. We've stood up to a lot of physical tests. And I thought the game against Everton would be similar to the game against Crystal Palace on the first day of the season this season, where it'd be difficult and we wouldn't play well, if that makes sense. We're not going to just be passing the ball around them and all that kind of stuff, but we would find a way to win. The team that played against Crystal Palace on the first day of the season wasn't that much different than the team that played against Everton. So from my perspective, it's a little bit of like, I think it's a mentality thing. I think the way that we played against Everton was just, we weren't quite up for it. And then them being on 100% was just not something that we really looked like we wanted to do. And I haven't seen us get bullied at all this season. That's the first time I've seen it. And I didn't like it because it reminded me so much of Crystal Palace last season, where we went into a game and we felt confident that we should be able to win it. And we just were not in the game at all. And that's what worried me. It was just, I thought we had those performances out of our body. Like even when we played against Southampton and Leeds, where we drew both of we beat Leeds, but probably should have drawn the game. And we drew to Southampton, and maybe we could say that we should have lost. But in those games, we still got something, even though we didn't play at our tip-top best, but we weren't getting like bullied. We may have been a little bit overwhelmed in some instances, but we held our own. That was not what happened against Everton. It just wasn't. And I get that it was a new manager bounce, and maybe I underestimated how big it was going to be, like how much Sean Dyche was going to be able to get them up for the game, how loud the crowd was going to be and stuff like that. But I still feel like Arsenal did their best to throw that game away by just not calming down, doing the basics, and just trying to get out of there with something. The chances that we were giving away, we don't give away chances like that. They should have been 3-0 up. And that really, really scared me. Now, like Nashville says, Everton were really good, to be fair. I'm not taking anything away from them. I think they outplayed us. They were out-tacticked. It was very much like Newcastle, but on steroids, where they pretty much just flooded the midfield so we couldn't play. They doubled up our wingers on the sidelines and made it really difficult for us to find a way to create those chances. So I think from a tactical standpoint, they were really, really good. But I still feel like Arsenal did their best to make it easier on them by just not doing the basics. And we gave the goal away on a corner, and it was so play goes out when I'm trying to do stuff with you guys. Sorry, hold on. You guys know every single time the internet. Let me read some of these comments really quick because I'm feeling like about to cry. All right. Matthew says it's a shame we lost because Ramsdale was brilliant and his performance will be forgotten. Gabrielle as well. I thought Gabrielle was really good. Nashville says this is where we really miss Jesus, having someone who can drop back and run at their back line. Dev M says Odegaard getting kicked early in the game is going to be a tactic most teams try to apply. Once he gets kicked a bit, he fades from games. Yeah, I mean, from the very beginning, Odegaard got a ball and Mikalenko was just kicking the shit out of him. And, once they started doing that, the crowd got really loud. Like, if that happened at the Emirates, I don't think they wouldn't have gotten the same reaction because our fans would have been up. But having their fans behind them, and the referee was kind of like, we're just going to let them play on, whatever. Because even when our center backs were wrestling with Dominic Calvert-Lewin, he didn't call it. And so I was kind of okay with that. But I do understand the Odegaard point. Like, he kind of just faded out of that game and he was really poor for the corner. I have to be honest. Like, I know he probably will look back on that and be like, why was I on Tarkovsky? But he still has to do better, right? Oh my gosh, the internet just keeps going out and I don't understand why it shouldn't be. I'm gonna keep that door open. I don't know why it's going out, you guys. I'm sorry. It only goes out when I'm trying to do my streams. You know what scared me about the loss, even though we lost against United and we played well? With Southampton, we should have ended the game the first half. This took me back. I don't like it. And I think that's the thing about it is like, I'm sorry, you guys. I want the internet to come back and be normal, but sometimes it just is hard. So just stick with me. It just takes me off of my game. Let me see. Yeah, like I don't like it either. And I think that's the hard part of the conversation with Arsenal fans is that a lot of people were like completely shut down the conversation around what we saw in that game because we're 5 points clear, we're fine, it's okay. Like we've only lost 2 games, but it's how you lose. How you lose is so important. And we lost very similarly to the way that we lost last, and we lost like 3 on the bounce when we lost to Southampton, and then also lost to we lost Crystal Palace, like lost to Brighton at home. Like it really took me back to those type of performances, and we know that those don't have anything to do with the players, or the talent, it's the mentality. And I think we just got completely overworked and didn't look up for the game. And we can't say that it was injuries or anything like that. And that's why when we were saying it was injuries last season, I'm like, I don't think it's injuries. I think, one, there's nobody to come in. I think there's also times to shake things up and freshen the squad up. And Arteta has never really had those players before, but he has them now and he needs to start using them. And it's just a matter of having the mentality and the experience to just at least nick a draw. Like in that game, we were never winning it because of everything that was happening. It wasn't going to happen. We weren't going to win it. But to lose it, I think was like, okay. Devm says the tempo from us was really slow. They did a good job in packing the midfield and cutting our passing lanes. They forced us to go wide and then double teamed our wingers. Exactly. I do have wired Ethernet. That's the problem, is I do actually have that. Like when I say the Wi-Fi, that's not what I mean. Like I literally have an Ethernet cord plugged into my laptop that is plugged straight into the router. So I don't know. It just goes out for me. Sorry, you guys. Jordan says it's not just that Everton did a good job blocking connections. Martin didn't pass to Gabby more than once the whole game. Similar stats to Eddie, Gabby, and also Xhaka. It's so wild how bad it was. This is why I'm saying I just think we need something fresh. So I guess my couple of points for the game would just be like mentality-wise, we were just way below our level, and I don't like that I saw the Arsenal that I saw last season when it started to get more the temperature started to rise. Like the pressure started to come up. We were going up against a team that was going to be up for it in a place that we never win, and we caved. Then, the way that we play, do we have another way of playing when we're low blocked? Because if we don't, we're in trouble. More teams, as they get more desperate to get points on the board, they will stop playing, try to play good football, and they'll start trying to just nick the points. And the best way for the lower half to nick points from Arsenal is to sit in a low block. And so the template is there. And so we have to know how to get through that. The third point would be there are players that are out of form, and we don't have an excuse now to not play them or to not to rotate them. Ben White, Martinelli, and Xhaka are all out of form for me. They're not clicking. It's not jiving. Ben White has looked off since Manchester United. Gabby has been off since, he came back from the World Cup, and Xhaka is just not getting into the box and making anything happen like he was before the World Cup either. And so none of them are playing like horrendously bad to the point where I'm like they're unusable or anything like that. But there are players that can now come in to shake things up, keep it fresh, and also keep the opposition guessing. Trossard is different than Martinelli. Vieira is different than Granit Xhaka. So you can make those changes now, and Arteta has to. He has to. And even like Nashville, you're saying like Martinelli misses Jesus. I agree. But from my perspective, like then you need to shake things up because Martinelli is he's suffering there on the touchline, unable to connect with anybody else. So I really think that like Arteta needs to shift things around, and against Brentford is the best opportunity to do it, because like it's not an easy game, but it's a game at home that we should be winning. And you want to make changes before you play against City the next week. So you want to see if it could work. And so for me, my perspective, switch things up. I'd play Fabio Vieira for Xhaka. I'd play Trossard for Martinelli, and I'd put Tommy in for Ben White and let those players sit. One, because they need to know that their spots can be taken, and two, because everybody knows what we're going to do now, and we've been sussed, like we've been clocked. Miamino says play Vieira with Odegaard and leave our midfield it won't. Well, first of all, I think that like our midfield looked vulnerable even with Granit in there against a really physical midfield. I think at home, where we're going to have a lot of the possession, that we need somebody that can get that's more of a final action type of player. If you have Thomas Partey available, this is all dependent on if Thomas Partey is available. And I said this on my 4 things we learned. Thomas Partey should not have come out when he did, probably because we weren't winning the game. And I don't know how Jorginho was supposed to help us push, if that makes sense. So if Thomas Partey is fit, I would play Odegaard and Vieira. That's what I would do. Oh my God, the internet. I'm sorry, you guys. I thought he was okay against Everton, but he's played against Wolves. He's played against a couple of different teams. He's played against Brentford, and I think he's fine. But we need a final action player. We need somebody that gets into the box, can put in the final pass, that's a little bit more mobile in those kind of positions. I would play Vieira. I think I get that people don't like Vieira, but I don't really see what he's done wrong, but just tried to adapt to the league and not always been 100%. But whenever he plays, he scores goals and gets assists. And that's what we need from that position right now, because we're losing goals. In terms of Trossard, you just need somebody that has a little bit more of creativity on that side. Martinelli is a little bit straight line and a little bit more direct, and we don't have as much space in behind. I'd play Trossard, and then we know why Tommy should play for White. Rosh says the template of low block has been there since last season. It takes more than just a blueprint to beat Arsenal. Had our mid been at the level they were previously, Everton wouldn't have been dominated. That may be the case, and I'm not saying that, like, I don't think every single team is going to low block us, because every team wants to play good football. Nottingham Forest, Leeds, Brentford, every single team, like literally Everton are probably the only team in the league that are going to actively play low block every single game because Sean Dyche is there. So I'm not saying that it's just going to happen like that and everybody's going to low block us. But as we get to the end of the season, where the teams at the bottom of the table are going to have to make a decision whether to play good football or to try to get points off of Arsenal, they're going to employ somewhat of that. And we have not passed that test yet this season. We just haven't. We drew to Newcastle and we lost to Everton. And so whether or not it happens every single game, Arsenal need to have a response for it, or a way of unpicking that lock. And I do think a lot of it has to do with Jesus. I think if Gabby is there, we move those pieces around, we have more of the ability to, like, we don't have enough dribblers in our team, and we definitely don't have them in midfield. That is one thing that in midfield I would like to see change, or a player to be brought in, somebody that can carry the ball. Because if you can carry the ball, you win fouls, you can break lines that way. When they're actively blocking passing lanes, you have to get through there in some way, and there's no space in behind, so the only way to do that is to dribble. We don't have any dribblers in midfield, and against Everton in our front line, there was nobody that was able to wiggle through. And so Jesus is a big part of it, but I do think we have to get real that the teams at the bottom of the table, once they know that they're in a relegation scrap, they are going to all low block us. It's just going to happen. Akil says, how about Zinchenko replacing Xhaka and KT coming in? I don't know if I believe that Kieran Tierney is the answer, because We just don't play with overlapping fullbacks. I see that people felt like because we didn't have overlapping fullbacks in this game, that's the reason why we didn't have enough numbers. I think we didn't overlap and underlap with the wingers because we were afraid of getting caught on the counter. That's what it felt like to me. So I don't think Kieran Tierney is going to make much of a difference when the way that we play just naturally is, Zinchenko popping into midfield to create, that extra man. Having him overlap and crossing the ball into nobody, from my perspective, is not going to help us out. That's not to be reductive about the way that Kieran Tierney plays, but you can just tell like there's just a little bit of a disconnect with the way that we play now and the way that he is. Leave him where he is and just change the winger. That's what I would do. But thank you so much for your super chat. Nashville says Zinchenko is our best player. Don't move him from the role he's more effective in. And what I would also say about that is he was taking so much of the responsibility on the ball. He has so many touches. And I just felt like the rest of our midfield was kind of like, at some point people are going to figure out a way to stop him, and everybody else needs to do something. And I think that's why I'm frustrated with Xhaka, is because when we play against teams like this, and of late, I felt like his touches weren't as useful. He wasn't able to progress the ball with his dribbling. He didn't really have the cuteness with his passing to make things happen. And he doesn't have a great shot. Like, he's not somebody he's not going to just make something out of nothing. And so I think that position is something that needs to be looked at in terms of how can we get a little bit more of that position. As much as people don't love Vieira, if it's going to be a low touch position anyway, because Xhaka is not really touching the ball a lot, I'd rather have somebody in the final third that can find the shot, that can find the pass, and is a little bit more creative. That's what I would do instead of, like you said, moving our best player. And changing all of that shit up. I think that's too much. We definitely need more dribblers. Hugo says, ESR, hurry up. He's another player that I just feel like we are missing a little bit of that ability to break lines with our dribbling. And we know that ESR is a good ball carrier. We don't have any ball carriers in midfield, and that really hurts us when they shut down the passing lanes. And so I would say we're desperate for ESR to come back. He might be back for Brentford. I'm hoping he is, because he's just a different type of player. We don't have that. Let's see what else you guys are saying. Lucas says, we need Jesus and ESR for games like this. Exactly. Darker Than Blue says, hi, Jess. Don't you think the real problem is we don't have another striker in the mold of Giroud? We don't have a striker at the moment, which is poor. What do you think about the penalty shout? I am somebody that doesn't actually believe that we need any sort of striker. That's just not something that I feel like we have to have. I think our fluid front three of Jesus, Martinelli, and Saka worked perfectly against all different types of teams because they caused chaos. The switching of positions made it difficult for the fullbacks and the center backs to know when to go and when to stay, when to commit and when to stay. And we don't have that anymore. And we're a little bit more stationary. And because they can double up on Martinelli and Saka, we're losing the ability to get the ball to Nketiah. I don't know. So it's not like Nketiah was getting a bunch of service and he was missing all these chances. That's not how the game went. They really cut the supply line. In midfield, there was no way for our midfielders to create. And then the supply line out wide was cut off by them doubling up. And they basically tried to make us make a decision. They said, you either commit more and leave yourself susceptible to the counterattack, or you don't commit anybody and you just leave Saka and Martinelli for dead. And basically we left Saka and Martinelli for dead, mostly Martinelli. So in terms of needing a striker, I would say we would need a striker if we were actively crossing the ball in and Nketiah was just missing chances. But when he gets service, he scores goals. So from my perspective, it's not about having a striker, and it wasn't a penalty. If they would have given that against us, I'd be really disappointed. Lucas says, we need a high volume shooter with better ball striking. Fit ESR could be that. I do find our forwards to be a little bit like afraid to shoot. I think when you shoot, things happen in terms of like deflections, corners, you put the defense under stress. And I think sometimes I don't want to lose it. I want to take the perfect shot. Martinelli used to be a shot monster, but he's more of a shot monster when he's more closer inside and plays more on the interior. And again, he can't do that until Jesus is back. So I think Trossard takes a lot of shots. He might be somebody good to bring in. I'll be really disappointed from the perspective of, playing players that are on form, or at least giving the players that are off form a rest, if I don't see any changes to the starting lineup against Brentford. We're at home. We have the ability we've been able to come back in difficult moments at home. So I don't know why we wouldn't. Gid says we need someone like Santi or Abu Dhabi in midfield. Well, yeah, if we want to go back a couple years, maybe, but yeah, I don't know. I think we just need a ball carrier. I think that's really what we need. And I know that's why they're looking at Declan Rice. Because from ball progression to, controlling the tempo, to winning the ball, to, a good engine, somebody that could develop into a good final third player as well. Like, I know that's why they're looking at him. Bro Pro says Ben White needs to step up. I think Ben White played enough. He played, like, from the minute he played against Crystal Palace, he's been almost flawless. And the first game that he didn't have a good game was against United. So that's about 4 months of playing perspective. He probably just needs to be rested. And if you continue to play players that are out of form and not show them that their spot could be taken, I think you get an instant response from players. Look at Emerson Royale. Instant response. Pedro Porro on the bench, he knows that guy's being brought in to take his spot. He played out of his skin the other day. And so I do think, you have to show players that their spot can be taken. And so playing Tomiyasu, who has come into a couple of games and looked pretty decent, play him, let Ben sit, and then the next time Ben plays, maybe he'll be back on form. But you can't just keep playing them. Like, that's what we did last season, and it really, I thought, hurt us. Let's see. Gid says Tommy played well against City, needs a chance. I agree. And that's the other thing is, if players are playing well, like Trossard, he played well against Man City. Tomiyasu played good against Man City. Both did not start against Everton. I feel like, sometimes you need to make those changes. Yuri says we need a striker in the mold of Didier Drogba. Well, everybody does. I mean, that's like saying we need a striker in the mold to goal brings everyone into the game. That's just not how we play. I feel like, why are Arsenal fans so obsessed with getting a big number 9? I don't really understand that. We need Jesus back. I think that's really what it is. I just don't understand the number 9 thing. I never understand it because it's just not the way that we play. Let's see. Rep says there's something off about Ben these days. I don't know why. I don't know either, but that's why I'm saying maybe just maybe give him some time off, one game to see what these other players can do against Brentford. And if they do well, then you make a decision. But, if we still have to play Ben White and bring them in, maybe it's fine. I don't know. But yeah, we'll see what happens with that. But in terms of Everton, it's a game that we can kind of put behind us, especially because Manchester City very unsurprisingly dropped points to Spurs, all 3 points to Spurs yesterday. And I don't know. I feel like a lot of Arsenal fans felt like they were shameless, and maybe cheering for Spurs a little bit. From my perspective, is I just wanted City to lose, and I didn't really care who the opponent was. And I think that's how Arsenal fans have to think of it. There's a lot of discourse online about you're not really an Arsenal fan if you want Spurs to win. It's like, it's not that you want Spurs to win, it's that you want City to lose. Like, when they play against Aston Villa, I'm going to want Aston Villa to win. Like, you know what I mean? And so I was happy to see it. It was unsurprising as well. Like, it was very obvious that City were going to drop those points from minute 1 from my perspective, because the possession, Spurs looked up for it. And once they got the goal, it was like, they're going to lose. Like, Manchester City are going to lose. And they're just struggling to figure out the Haaland situation. Haaland was making so many runs and not getting any sort of service whatsoever. Pep seems to be tinkering with the lineup, and when I see Pep tinkering, I think he's not quite sure what he should be doing. At that moment, he's a little bit like, I'm not sure if this is what I should do. I'm not sure. Tinkering with the lineup, clearly some player unrest there, not being able to figure out the Haaland thing, and Arsenal 5 points clear. Which I think from their perspective as well, like, you have to I would like to be a fly on the wall with Pep and the people that decided it was, like, a good idea to sell Jesus and Zinchenko to us, because you can pretty much pinpoint those 2 additions being the reason why we're flying, and maybe losing those players are a reason why they don't look as good this season, plus Sterling, obviously. So I think there's a lot of that. Like, if there's another team in front of them, like Liverpool, I don't think it would be as bad, but it's because it's Arsenal. We have your assistant coach and 2 of your players, and we're flying. So it's insane. But, you know, them dropping the points does make it a little bit more palatable that we lost. Um, Not all the way, but we pretty much end the weekend where we started. Um, and so I think we can chill out on the meltdown and all that kind of stuff. I saw a lot of meltdown. A lot of people were really like, "Oh my gosh, we're finished. The title race is over." But City are going to drop points, and we're going to drop more points. So we have to kind of keep ourselves calm and also believe in the boys as well, because I think the level of like it's over also is not a good look in terms of believing in the team. And so I believe this team can rebound from the really poor performance against Everton. It was a little bit like, oh my gosh, like, is this the team from last season or no? But I believe that they won't let that one performance take them down. Sin says Spurs were saucing with their counter-attacking play, though they were. That's the thing about Spurs, though. Like, we know that they can play better, but they have a mentality issue. Um, they have a mentality issue, and so they waited until they played against Spurs to play that way. The interesting thing is that Spurs have now put themselves in a position to really fight for top 4, which puts more pressure on Newcastle and Manchester United, which from my perspective is a good thing, because the more pressure there is in the top 4 race, the better it is. Like, the last thing you really want is the teams behind you, or like Manchester United and Man City, feeling like there's no pressure on them. So I think it's a good thing that Spurs are kind of like pushing a little bit. But yeah, I think they just have a mentality issue. Fabrizio says people need to remember that a year ago, when City had Jesus and Sterling, they had a pure goal scoring number 9. We don't have another striker. They never had a pure goal scoring number 9. I feel like even we're scoring so many goals, like more goals than we've had in this period. Like, we're scoring so many goals. Like, I don't feel like there's, except for like the last 2 games. Obviously, we didn't score in the last 2 games, but we're not like in a position where I feel like a striker is the issue. Because when people keep saying the striker is the issue, I'm like, so are you saying that we're not scoring goals? That's my question. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you're saying that we need a number 9, are you saying that we're not scoring enough goals? Because if we're scoring enough goals and that's not really the issue, then why do we need a number 9? Is it just because it makes you guys feel better? You're just not sure? Because our team spreads the goals across the team. And I think that's the best way to go about it. Because the last thing you want is for one player that's scoring all of your goals to go off the boil, and then you don't know what you're doing. Um, so I don't know. The number 9 thing just throws me off. Um, let's see. Abscess says, Jess, Kane is my least favorite player in the world. I just don't like him, but the way Hey, you guys. I don't know what happened. The internet is so bad right now, and so as much as I want to finish the stream, I'm just gonna have to end the stream here. I'm really sorry. Like, I hate when this happens. You guys know I like hate it, but Ben Hutchinson, I'm blocking you. You've been extremely rude since you've been in here, and nobody wants you in here anymore. But I will talk to you guys tomorrow. I'm gonna try to fix the internet and try to come back tomorrow, but I just can't finish the stream with the internet going in and out the way that it is. I know it's so hard to to watch the show when it goes in and out like that, but I really appreciate you guys joining the stream. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and we'll try again tomorrow. Bye, guys.